welcome to episode 252 of Checkpoint Chat. My name is Alessandro Barbosa. I'm joined by Matthew Figueroa.
A nice bright red hoodie. Is it a Mario hoodie?
It isn't. It's an Adidas one.
Oh, fake Mario hoodie.
I do want a Mario hoodie would be cool. Like the I think you have that Luigi shirt, the green one that just has like the big L. A hoodie that is red with a big M. You know, that would be a big W.
It'd be a big Wario. A big owl and a green hoodie would be
a purple one with a big W. I'd vibe with that.
That would be a big
And then Waluigi would be yellow, I assume. Or was it the other way around?
It's the other way around. No.
Oh, it's the other way around. Yeah. Wario's yellow.
Purple.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, my bad. Take my gamer card now.
I've just thought, so that does that mean if we were to adopt the Nintendo approach here, are there evil versions of us called WahMatty and WahAlessandro?
WahSandy, WahMatty, WahSandy.
I don't know what they look like, but it's just the names alone are hilarious.
So, would you say that Wu-Tang is an evil version of Tang. Or something? Yeah.
We can do this all day. Wu-Long is the evil version of Long.
Oh, you know, this is Nintendo makes the rules. We don't. How do you think they came across like the colors yellow and purple? Are they like, you see, this is where we need Lenska because she'd maybe know. Are they like complementary colors to red and green or something like that?
Forget that. I want to know how they came up with the alternate egos. Was it like, how do you go, okay, we want to keep Mario, but what do we affix to the front that it sounds evil?
Wario.
Okay, I suppose you flip the M, it's a W. And somebody went, aha, it's a Wario. And then at a later stage, like, we need to expand the Mario cinematic universe. Let's bring Waluigi in. What Princess Peach?
I love that Waluigi got the better end of the stick in terms of like the transformation. Like for Wario, they just made Mario quite fat.
Yeah, in yellow. Gave him
but Waluigi just got a fucking moustache. That's all he got. Like,
it's purple, it's tall, moustache.
Yeah, he's very tall. He's very like pencily. Yeah.
Well, don't stop.
I always think Wario would be like a great Italian mobster.
Of course he would. Wario. So you'll sleep with the mushrooms if you don't meet your end of the bargain.
Sure, sleep with the mushrooms. God damn. Is Mario even Italian? Like
Mario? Yeah. I mean, he has to be. I don't know, canonically in the Mushroom Kingdom, I don't think he goes like, hi, I'm Mario, I'm Italian. Although in the Mario movie, he's Italian, 100%.
Oh, because he comes from like New York, doesn't he?
Yeah, 100% Italian. So maybe canonically he is. I don't know. In the games, though, it's just a thing of he's Mario and he's got Mario named after the plumber or landlord. I think that's the story. I don't know if that's an urban legend. Do you not know that story? I think
no.
Maybe it's an urban legend, but I think they got the name from the landlord at the time or something like that. The name was Mario.
Like Miyamoto's landlord was named Mario?
No. Sorry, the creators. Hang on.
What do you mean the creators? Miyamoto was the creator.
The name, yeah. Where does the name Mario? And now it's going to be like Mario comes from Italy. I'm like, no. Where does it?
I've never heard this.
What? Where does Nintendo? Wait, let me Google this probably. Where did Nintendo get the name Mario from? So many elements of Mario's design were due to the graphical limitations of arcade hardware, such as a large nose, a moustache to accentuate his nose, and overalls to make his arms more identifiable. Originally called Mr. Video and Jumpman, he was renamed Mario after Nintendo of America's landlord Mario Segale.
Oh, Nintendo of America. Okay, that makes more sense. I was like, what are the odds of Miyamoto having a landlord in Japan called Mario? Like, very
Whatever,
small,
his name's Mario Summer. Like, come on.
I just love that in that sentence, they're like, because of graphical limitations, he had a big nose. What the fuck does that have to do with graphics? Like,
no, I think maybe in order, because otherwise there would just be like a square face with pixels, but they had to give him like
So they want to accentuate his face.
Yeah.
So they gave him a gigantic nose, clown
shit. They gave him a
shit.
moustache, I guess, so that you could see where his mouth was. It's clever how they got around these things. I don't know. It's the same thing with I mean, a lot of those older games, but Final Fantasy of those years also, it was like, well, how do you make these people identifiable with so few pixels? And they did. They had a 256, whatever the hell the number is, and you have to be like, I'm going to give this man a big nose so people can see the rest of his face. Oh, that's graphic design.
Have you ever seen the Twitter accounts? It's quite old now. I don't know if they still exist, but for the longest time they would post like screenshots of older, more pixelated games, and then show how they look on like a modern monitor, and then show how they look on a CRT, like an old TV.
No, actually, I haven't seen that.
The games were actually designed for CRTs because the CRTs would blend pixels together. So now when you see it on like a modern screen, the blocks are very defined, and you lose like it looks very blocky and pixely. But then on a CRT, because it blended together,
it looks right.
It actually looks like an image, and that's what they designed it for. So I remember there was a great one for Symphony of the Night, where you would see like the portrait of Dracula, and like now he's just got like red blocks for eyes, but on the CRT it would like smudge that red, and it would look like, like a line of red, so it almost looks like his eyes were glowing red, which is like a much more vivid image of Dracula. It's pretty cool. It just shows that like when you use emulators and they have like CRT filters, that's kind of what they're trying to replicate. Yeah.
It is interesting that today like pixel art is an actual art. I mean, not that it never was an art, but now to actually take on doing pixel art is intentionally is like, damn, like I think you need talent to replicate that.
Yeah, like you look at something like Stardew and how much information they pack into like pixels there. I'm trying to think of like my favorite modern pixel art game. I don't know. There's so many like good ones. I really like. Did you ever play Downwell?
Yes, yeah.
Downwell is like so good because it's just white, black, and red.
It's super simple.
Yeah.
I think one of the best modern looking pixel arts or replication of that style, I think, is still like Octopath Traveler. That I think the first one, I could be wrong, I think that is the first time they were like, it's a 2.5D, whatever the technical term is, where it's like it's that old school look, but there's a depth to it. It was
like
cool.
A diorama almost.
Yeah, very cool. And then I think modern day, I'm playing Sea of Stars at the moment on Switch, and that's also pixel arts and like a gorgeous looking game. It's amazing what a modern day pixel game can do. Like the way you walk past, for example, a lamppost, and the way that the fire glows and stuff. I'm like, damn, that looks really nice. How did they do that? It's really cool.
It's interesting though, because they're definitely playing on like a nostalgic look, but it's also like a lot of the things they're doing now would never be possible on the hardware then, because there's just so much more information packed into like every one of the pixels. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like Octopath would never work on older hardware. There's absolutely no way.
Definitely not.
Yeah, Sea of Stars. I do want to get to that. That's like a Chrono Cross homage, isn't it?
Or Chrono Trigger.
Or Chrono Trigger. Yeah, I keep getting confused.
It's interesting because I'm maybe 10 hours in. It's very good. I'm enjoying it. Maybe a bit of a slow burn start.
Okay.
But yeah, very good. Looks great. The combat's very easy to understand. Interesting mechanics and twists on like turn-based combat. Yeah, and I will talk about it one day.
It's on Game Pass, right?
It was. I don't know if it still is.
Oh, did it go off? Okay.
It's dirt cheap on Switch anyway. It's like 200 grand.
I think that on Switch would actually be quite nice. Like, just check in on that, and maybe one day I'll play Chrono Trigger. I've heard it's quite good.
I've played Chrono Trigger back then. I never finished it. I should revisit it. It was very good. That you play that and you go, damn, how did I do this in like whatever year it came out, 90 whatever.
It's like a PS1 game, wasn't it?
I think it was PS. Or was it Nintendo? I don't actually. I played it on the DS. I think I played it on.
Oh, because they had a a version on there.
Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah, it was on the SNES.
SNES, yeah.
Nintendo DS.
Yeah, when you play that, you go
Chrono Cross is on the PS1.
When you play, that,
Yeah.
and you remember they did this on the SNES, you're like, how the hell did they do this? It's way too much depth for a game on such an old piece of hardware.
Yeah, so Chrono Trigger was 1995 on the SNES.
Yeah.
And then Chrono Trigger. Chrono Cross was 1999 on the PlayStation and takes place in the same world as Chrono Trigger.
Who knew?
I thought they were direct sequels. I didn't realize.
I don't know if they are related-ish.
Maybe I'll load up, Chrono Trigger on the good old 3DS.
Go back and
sounds pretty good.
time.
The eShop is closed. Well,
oh no,
it's a pity,
can't have
Nintendo, that you did that.
Yeah,
it's a right shame.
Isn't what's happening with the Xbox? Isn't the 360 marketplace or something also closing down soon?
Yeah. It's weird. If I'm not mistaken, the 360 games that are still available via backwards compatibility on like Xbox Series, whatever, you'll still be able to purchase, I think.
But others you won't.
At the very least, you'll still be able to re-download and play them.
Yeah.
Maybe you won't be able to like purchase them if you've never got them. But yeah, that's, if I'm not mistaken, like imminent.
Yeah, I think there was I saw a headline of a sale or something happening, before they do it.
Yeah, it's July 29th that it's closing, and a bunch of games are on sale. It's a real pity because there's a lot of like indie games on there. I mean, indie
Xbox
games really
Live,
found.
Yeah,
Xbox Live Arcade was huge for indie games. Like Bastion, made a big splash there. Supergiant's first game. You had cool ones from like Ubisoft, like what was it called? I think it was called Outlast or something like that. Like a really nice game. Insanely Twisted Shadow Planet was also an Xbox Live Arcade game. Like some of those sure have come to PC since, so it's like you can still play them, but some are just like stuck on there. So yeah, there's a nice list on the Xbox site that has like specials on games that are on special right now that you can purchase, and then I assume because you can purchase them, you'll still be able to download and play them on newer consoles. So
that would defeat the purpose if you couldn't.
Sure, you can get the first Watch Dogs. I forgot they came out on Xbox 360. Holy shit.
This is when you and I start feeling old, when the generations start blurring together. You're like, where did I play that? Was that
Valiant Hearts came out on Xbox 360.
Valiant Hearts, that is good. On 360?
Far Cry 4 came out on 360.
My goodness, that is wild to me.
I can't actually... Child of Light.
Did you play Child of Light?
I haven't yet, actually. I do want to, though.
It was really good as well. I loved that game.
The Ubisoft doing their UbiArt thing. That was a good time. Rise of the Tomb Raider was on 360? No.
No.
You're lying.
You're
lying.
No, maybe it was.
I wonder if it was a cross-platform
It might have been cross-platform.
Because I swear this came out after...
Rise of the Tomb Raider? No.
Because that's the second one in the
that's
series.
An Xbox One game,
It came out in 2015, but it came out on PS4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One. What the fuck?
That is wild.
It came out on 360. Like the game
how did the game run on 360?
Yeah. Jesus.
Because
that game was beautiful on the Xbox One.
Smear Vaseline on your screen, and that's what it'll probably look like on the 360.
That is wild.
Unreal.
Huh. Okay. Well.
Who knew?
The more you know, the more you know. And the more you know, the more you play. And the more you play, the more games you play. Let's Checkpoint Chat to talk about video games.
I want that on a shirt.
Yeah. The more you know, the more
Mario
you play.
on it, just because we'll get the reference.
The why you know, the why you play. WahSandy. Yeah, just in quotations and just WahSandy at the bottom quoted. God,
very wise man, that was Sandy.
Speaking of games, I haven't been playing them, but you have.
I've been playing games.
Yes, you have. I guess if you have to,
if I must.
In this busy period of playing games, I want to hear lots about the two games you've been playing. I don't know which one you want to start with first.
Let's start with old Stellar Blade. Let me just pull up my gameplay here.
Stellar Blade came out, what, April?
Yeah, it was a couple months ago. I mean, we're in June. Shit. Yeah, I think it was April-ish. So yeah, it came out then. A lot happened between now and then. Been busy with other stuff, i.e. Final Fantasy. Don't want to touch anything else till I was done. And now I've put in a good 10 hours into Stellar Blade. Let me tell you, this game has surprised me in a good way, because I didn't think I wouldn't like it, but I'm liking it a lot more than I thought I would.
That's always great. I love when that happens.
Yeah, it's a character action game, which will make one immediately think of the likes of a Bayonetta or Devil May Cry. And it is that, but what's interesting is that it feels more weighty, in the sense that it reminds me a lot of Sekiro in a lot of ways, in terms of how you can like block, for example. Just the combat has a way to it, which it kind of blends the two together. And then it's funny because there's the typical Dark Souls thing where if you rest at a campsite, the enemies respawn. I don't know why. In terms of story that happens, there's no like canonical explanation that I've identified, but it happens. Okay.
Okay.
So it's like taking all of these, a little bit of Bayonetta, a little bit of Sekiro, a little like a touch of Dark Souls, even in terms of bosses and boss design, and it's just like brought them all together into this very stylistic character action game that visually looks really good. I don't know if you've like seen any gameplay or anything, but I think it's quite a pretty looking game. And I think I'll talk about the combat a bit. What makes it interesting is that you got your typical light attack, heavy attack, whatever. But you also get to charge a bar called I think it's beta energy, where if you block, let me talk about why it reminds me of Sekiro. If you time your block with an attack, you do a deflection, very akin to Sekiro. There's a satisfying like swing sound.
Oh yes.
If you time that right, you build up a meter, which you can then use to do other attacks. So there's this cool balance of you've got offense. If you time your blocks properly, you can do special attacks. And then now, just 10 hours in, now I've unlocked a whole separate bar and a whole separate meter as well that also charges up in a similar manner, which has unlocked a whole separate skill tree of special attacks. So there's definitely a lot of depth to this game on that front. At a later stage, you also get a weapon that you can shoot. You can do ranged combat with, and it's not just one type of shell. You can put shotgun shells, explosive shells, etc. So there's definitely a lot of depth to the combat in this game. And I think that's where it surprised me the most, is that I was expecting, like, I don't know what I was expecting actually, just kind of like a mindless button mashy thing. I mean, if you play a Bayonetta, for example, you can arguably get away with just mashing buttons. If you don't care for the score or anything, you can just, mash your way through it. But you definitely need to have some kind of strategy in this game, because you can die very quickly. And the enemies aren't like too difficult, but if you're not paying attention, they can overwhelm you quickly. So yeah, I think it's just surprised me, because I don't know what I expected, to be honest.
But that's kind of cool. It does sound like a bit of a mishmash of ideas. Like, if you have 5 places to rest and enemies respawn, does that mean like levels fold in on each other? Like, why, if it's linear, why would you need to rest at a campsite, for example? It doesn't
quite nail. I mean, there are, it's the typical thing where you'll go down a path and unlock a shortcut. But it feels, it's not quite as good as, say, a Bloodborne or Dark Souls, in that you come back to an area, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe how this connects. It's kind of like, oh, I guess this is where I am now. But it does have elements of that. That makes sense. Not
and you've got this little robot that's following you.
Oh, so that's another character, and that, if you see I'm using ranged combat now, that's actually the drone on my arm. So that's, I
was about to say, because like I've heard lots of comparisons between this and Nier Automata, and like in Nier Automata, that's exactly how that works as well. Which is just funny.
So I've never played Nier Automata, so I mean, you would know better than I am, like, where the overlap comes in here.
I mean, I've just heard anecdotally that this game tries a lot of things that are very near adjacent, and from a mechanical standpoint, that's one of them. Like your drone is your ranged attack, although you don't like hold it like a gun, it just kind of floats and shoots for you. I've also heard the story is trying to like dabble in the same themes, but nowhere near as like delicate and complex with those themes. And you said that the story's like throwaway.
I was gonna ask, I mean, I know Neo Automata is like also futuristic, humanity's like kind of gone sort of thing, whatever. And I think the premise, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the premise is very similar in that you start the game, you are called, your name's Eve, but you are an angel sent from a colony in space. And then as you play the game, you figure out that like, oh, humanity was kind of pushed to extinction and they fled to space. And now you've come back as Eve to try to save humanity from this threat called the Natiba. Like, I don't know if it's like, if it's alien or just, you know, a parasite that's taken over Earth, but your sole mission is to, you know, save humanity from this threat. And that's like the premise for the story in a nutshell. And obviously there's a lot of exposition when you're exploring, like you'll find, you know, data logs, notes, that sort of thing, which flesh it out. But I was saying to you before we started recording, it's not that the story is bad, it's just it's not particularly good. I don't think it's an interesting setting, but I think it's maybe let down also by the voice acting. Like, not that it's bad, it's just not really good either. Some of the lines, the way they're delivered, I'm like, kind of like roll my eyes, like, of course, you know, that's what's said, or that's how it's being said. But it's not taking away from our overall enjoyment of the game. I mean, even just to just touch on the combat a bit more in terms of how you can sort of customize further with, you get things called like collectibles or items. So for example, you get an exospine, which is an item you can equip, which will give you, so the one I've got equipped, it sort of lets me do more damage, do more critical damage and more damage when I finish combos. You get a whole lot of different ones. So you get one that like maybe does more shield damage against enemies. You can level it up to do other things. Then you get gears that further let you augment, you know, what you want to focus on in your playstyle. So for example, you might have a gear, and you can equip 4 of them by the end of the game. So you might have a gear that lets you do 10% faster attack speed, one that lets you do you know, maybe move faster or do more damage with combos. So there's that level of customization as well, which is really cool.
Okay. I'd love an exospine. That sounds sick.
It sounds good. And then, yeah, it's funny because the more I play, the drip feeds you things. I mean, you don't start with all of this. You don't start with the ranged weapon. You see me doing a double jump. I got that recently. And it's a game changer. I'm like, man, why did they not just start the game like this? It feels good to double jump and get around, because initially the first areas you're exploring, you can do a single jump and it's a bit awkward. Like, you know, if you fall down a ledge, I'm like, how the hell do I jump back up here? I can't jump high enough. Like, just give me the double jump. And it's not like a Metroidvania
thing where you get like a new ability and you're like, oh, I can go back to this place and this place.
You can revisit past areas, and there are side quests which will take you back to past areas. But I not to my knowledge has it been a thing of like, oh, you've got this ability, now you can go back and do. It's like not the. I don't think it's that level of Metroidvania where you kind of have to go back or you want to go back to explore. If that makes sense. Okay. But yeah, it's an interesting game. Like, it's not without fault. I think it's weird because visually the game's gorgeous, but there's something about it that makes me think of PS3 era games. And
yeah, it's got that vibe to it. I won't lie.
Like there's something about the visual that it makes me think PS3 era games had this sort of maybe shine to it or a specific kind of look to it, and this has that. Even though I can't put my finger on it, but there's also certain design choices which are a little bit frustrating. It's like, for example, if you take, right out the gate, you can fast travel in this game, but only if you're at a fast travel point, which is annoying because it's like, I'm in the middle of a wasteland, I need to get to that side of the map, but I've got to first travel to this fast travel point before I can travel to that fast travel point. It just feels like a weird thing when I'm like, you can fast travel in this game, why can I not just open the menu, go there?
Yes.
You know? And like that's fine, but where it's really frustrating, it's when you finish, you get a whole lot of side missions to do. And if you, so say for example, it's like I need to go find, you saw that cutscene, I just died.
You were fucking destroyed by
I wasn't fast
Jesus.
enough. So it's like, oh, you need to go kill this enemy, is my side quest. So I go kill that enemy. I've had this happen to me, and it's like, cool, you've completed your side quest. Do you want to go hand it in? You can then hit yes, and then like it'll take you straight back to whoever gave you the quest. But I'm like, no, I'm still in this area. Like there's a collectible right there that I want to go pick up. So I say no, and then then I can stay in the area. But then there's no quick way for me to get back to the hub. I have to like run to a fast travel point, run to like my ship, travel to the home base. I'm like, it just feels weird. Like why was that not considered in 2024? It just feels a bit strange.
Might be wrong, but that sounds like a thing your automata did as well. It frustrated me to no end. It was just like, it would take you so far back and then be like, cool, you handed this in for one line of dialogue, now you're here. And you're so far away from what you wanted to do. And you're like, fuck.
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword, because it's nice to have the thing of you can go back right now, but then it's also like, good luck getting back to where you were.
Like, I don't mind games that do that if it's like, very, you're going to talk to a character and get something quite nice, story-wise, or there's a reason for going back. But so often, I think Stellar Blade and Nier and so many other games are guilty of this, where they make you go back to a quest giver and the person's just like, hey, thanks for doing this. And then you get a reward. And it's like, why couldn't that have triggered automatically when I just finished the side quest, Like, there's no purpose to go back here. It's just wasting my time.
To your point, some of the side quests you get are literally given through a bulletin board. So I'm like, I don't need to go back there. Surely you can just hand the quest in. we live in this world where you've got communication. Like my drone, it's a pilot talking to me. Like surely you can send a message, send an SMS back to Mother Base.
Final Fantasy Rebirth is surprisingly pretty good at that. Like the times that it does make you go back to a quest giver, it's for a reason.
Yes, yeah. Look, so but all that said, I think if you could play this game, not touch a side quest, have a good time. I'm really enjoying it, and I think it's about I'm 10 or so hours in. I think the average playtime is 20 to 25 hours if you kind of mainline it. But if you do want to 100% it, there's a ton of side quests, and I think that'll, from what I've seen, it'll push up the playtime to like 50 plus hours.
I wonder if it does the Nier thing of like multiple endings, like
I've seen people say that because it's funny. I was digging through Reddit, and someone was like, I don't know if I should buy this game. Like 20 hours seems a bit short when I'm playing, also
where are we in games nowadays? Jesus,
I'm like 20 hours is perfectly fine. But then people are saying like, no, it's a character action game. The idea is that you're meant to play it multiple times. But I was like, they didn't really explain why. Is there a specific reason? Like, does the story change, or is it's a character action game? You finish it, then you unlock a score system. Like, I don't know what the deal is that you would want to play it again.
Because Nier is quite like complex in that way, like the very first time you play, you'll get most likely like what they consider called the A ending. There are instances where you can like prematurely bring about credits, like, and they're more like Easter egg funny things. Like there's a pond somewhere near the beginning of the game where you can eat like a fish and it will just instantly kill you, and you'll get like ending F. And it'll be like, what? I recall I think at the start of the second part of the campaign, you're given a choice, or it doesn't even seem like a choice. It's like, oh, you need to go help this character. And the very first time I misunderstood the layout of the level, so I ended up walking away from where I was meant to go, and it was just like, it gave me a new ending. It's like you abandoned your duty and went on to live a life of peace, and that was just the end of the game. I was like, okay, that's interesting.
Like it is a mistake.
Yeah. But Nier has this thing where it's like you beat ending A, and then you kind of replay the entire game again from a slightly different perspective, and then you get ending B, and then that allows you to go back again, and you see the story again from a completely different character's point of view who didn't kind of like even exist. initially. So you're playing a lot of the same events over again, but from different perspectives, and eventually that culminates in like this big ending that is actually the ending to the narrative, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
But I think the big difference, based off what you've said here, between Stellar Blade and Nier is that where Nier is very narratively complex and very narratively interesting, asks some very big, like, existential questions, its combat does not support the amount of time that you need to see that through. Like, its combat is very one note. And a lot of people, I mean, I think Ma and I discussed this a while back, like, the game is best enjoyed just bumping it down to easy, not really giving a shit, and just being there for the story. Whereas Stellar Blade, you know, from what I've seen and what you've said, is the reverse. It's like the narrative isn't the thing keeping it going, but the combat definitely supports like enjoyment.
No, combat's really good.
Interesting.
I'm enjoying that. And there are, I mean, I don't have any footage yet, but there are the typical big bosses with like big health bars, big cinematic. It's very cool.
No, it looks good. I want to give it a go, purely because, you know, of the Sekiro sort of vibes it has. So yeah, definitely angered that it was censored, you know, very sad.
Oh my God.
About that.
Let me talk to that for 3 seconds. This game is overly sexual sometimes, like to nobody's surprise. It's people crying that it's been censored. I'm like, really? There's a part in the game, I don't know if I've told you about this, where in the main city hub that you can hang out in is like a bar. So I walk in and there's a pool table. I'm like, oh, there's a prompt here. Oh God, can I actually play pool? Push the button prompt and she just leans on the table seductively. I'm like, why? What? For fans, you know, up in arms, I'm like, they didn't censor this.
There's nothing wrong with the game doing this, but to come at it and be like, we need a free Stellar Blade, it's like,
that's I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, and to be clear, like, you know, all intents and purposes, if that's what the game is, cool. But don't be up in arms like, I can't believe journalists have caused this game to be censored or something. Like, that's not what happened. Like, it's not by any stretch of the imagination. The game's still very much lots of booty shots. You won't be disappointed.
It's very much the thing that you have come to it for, if that's what you're looking for. Yeah.
A lot of very interesting outfits. Holy moly, but no censorship.
Yeah, I've seen some of them. I'm like, if this is the censored version, I want to see what the uncensored version was. Because, like, what the fuck would that be? Like, I can't imagine anything more revealing getting past, like, a ratings board anyway. So,
it's bizarre.
Sounds cool. Stellar Blade sounds really cool, and I'm keen to give it a go.
It is good. Yeah.
Another new game you've been playing is a game that was meant to come out a while ago and then just kind of like disappeared and blipped from the map and then just arrived back.
What is
talking about xDefiant? I really hate the name of this game just because it starts with a lowercase letter. It really irritates me.
Same. So let me just hit play there. xDefiant, if you don't know, is I suppose Ubisoft's answer to the Call of Duty and all the other fast-paced shooters on the market at the moment, because we don't have enough of these shooters going around.
Of course not.
There's a clear absence of them. But all that said and done, xDefiant is actually very good. I've put in also around 10 hours, and it's funny, I think it's very good because it's very good at mimicking Call of Duty, which is like, it's a backhanded compliment, don't get me wrong. Like, when the game has movement that feels fast and gunplay that feels good because it's taking some notes from Call of Duty, I'm like, that's probably the right thing to do because Call of Duty is the benchmark on that regard.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, but all that said, xDefiant is just a free-to-play Ubisoft shooter with a bunch of game modes, and it leans into the Ubisoft universe in that you can play as different factions. So, for example, you can play as a member of DedSec. You can play as a member from Echelon, from the Splinter Cell universe, and all these different factions have different abilities. Which it's funny. It's like Ubisoft looked at Overwatch, looked at Call of Duty, just took a little bit of elements of a little bit of Apex Legends, maybe in terms of abilities, just brought them all together into this shooter. So, for example, if you're playing as a ghost from old Ghost Recon. You have the option of choosing a shield you can deploy in front of you, like one of those energy shields, or an actual ballistic shield. Like that can be your loadout. And then each of these factions also has an ultimate ability. So if you're playing a cleaner from the Division, for example, your ultimate ability is that you pull out a flamethrower, which is short range, but it kills very quickly. So there's all these there's these subtle different things between the factions that brings you to start thinking of like, okay, well, you can't just go in and like shoot. You kind of need to have some kind of team composition if you want to do well. You won't necessarily like lose if you don't have that, but it definitely works in your favor if you do have, you've got from Far Cry 6, they've got I can't think of the faction's name now. I've just blanked on them. But that's like the healing class. It kind of helps to have a healing class. You've got Echelon, which is, they can either, your two abilities you can choose from, you can either go invisible for a short amount of time, or you've got like a radar that reveals enemy positions. So if you start balancing out, I saw that. Look, it's a bit overpowered.
Yeah, it sounds a bit hectic for a shooter of this kind. Yeah.
So team composition is certainly helpful, but it's not a primary thing. What you want to focus on is the gunplay, which is very good. So you can choose, as you'd expect, from SMGs, assault rifles, shotguns, sniper rifles, and using them. It's a typical thing of the more you use a gun, the more you level it up, the more attachments you get for it, the better the weapon gets. And I think, look, it's been a long time since I've put a lot of time into Call of Duty, but the gunplay in this feels very good in that I can feel, as I level up a weapon and I start putting attachments on it, I can feel the difference. I'm like, oh, like this does feel more accurate, or yes, I'm now running faster because of this attachment or whatever, or I'm aiming down sights a lot quicker. And I'm just having a good time with it. Like, it's also one of those things where a throwaway title like Stellar Blade, where I was like, yeah, like cool, and then I play it and I'm like, oh shit, this is actually really good. I mean, the only reason this popped up on my radar was because a couple of my friends were like, it's launching, let's play it. We played the beta, we enjoyed it. I was like, yeah, cool, I'll play it. And I'm like, damn, it's actually really good. I think Ubisoft have definitely nailed the fast-paced feeling of the shooter. Like I said earlier, sprinting and running around the map, it feels good. Like the kills come fast, you die regularly, but you spawn instantly, you're back in the action. Yeah. Sorry, can you hear me?
It looks good. Like I'm watching the footage of you playing, and it looks very like sweaty shooter sort of vibes, which is, if you're going to go for Call of Duty, that's kind of what you need to go for. It's far less casual nowadays and more competitive and very precise. So yeah, it looks good. I like that it's not a hero shooter, because at first I was like, do the factions have specific weapons? But it doesn't seem to be
you can use any weapon
yeah.
with any class. So, and that also works to your favor. It's like, well, if you play the Splinter Cell faction, you can go invis for time, which maybe works well if you're sniping. You can, but I mean, it's twofold. You can use it as like, I'm going to use it to reposition on the map where nobody can see me, or I'm going to take a close range weapon like a shotgun, go invisible, and go behind enemy lines. So it's interesting that there's that variation on those options available to you. And then in terms of actual gameplay modes, again, there's been inspiration taken from a number of them. So you've got your typical push the payload, which, people say that's from Overwatch. It's from Team Fortress. Okay, that's where it came from.
100%.
Push the payloads, that's in there. You've got what we're playing, if you're watching the video feed, this, I think it's called Domination or Control, where there's 3 points on the map. You've got to capture them. The more points you own, the more points you're getting. It's for the team. You've got a mode that reminds me very much of Rush from Battlefield, which is, if you remember, you kind of have to take objectives in a linear manner. Like you spawn, you take the first 2 points on the map, then it unlocks the next part of the map for you to take a point. So there's variation on that front as well. And then there's also, it's not kill confirmed like Call of Duty, where it's deathmatch and you've got to pick up dog tags, but there's a similar mode where you kill enemies and they drop medals you have to pick up. So there's everything. It's like a buffet, I guess, of just all the good stuff from shooters, just, mashed into one new shooter. And
it's kind of wild that all those elements work together because they are from like vastly different games.
From different games, yeah.
In some ways, yeah.
But it's also what's cool is that like I get your concern of like, is it a hero shooter? It's not though, but what's cool is that they can definitely keep it alive by bringing new factions in, and I think that's the plan. I mean, I laughed because we were joking about when are they going to bring the Assassin's Creed faction in, and they probably will. I mean, like you're going to have old Basima, old Tear with the gun. I don't know what the abilities will be. I mean,
what if they just bring Desmond? At least he's a modern character,
Bring Desmond in. But Ubisoft does have, a pretty big library of factions that can lean into. So I think this game will get support, for a long time.
Wait till Rayman gets put in.
You start thinking like, well, what can Ubisoft put in here? There's so much they can actually
give Rayman a gun.
All that said, I don't know how this survives in the long term in terms of, the new Call of Duty comes along. Are the people playing this going to skip Call of Duty? Are they going to play Call of Duty then come back to this in the long run? Like, I don't know. Maybe you're part of the camp that you don't have the money to buy Call of Duty, so you just stick with a free-to-play xDefiant.
Because this is free-to-play, correct?
This is free-to-play.
Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, I think we were speaking about it last time. Like, this is when the real work starts on these sorts of games, because now it's you will always get some interest when you bring out a new game. Like, if you don't have that, you're pretty much dead in water already. But like when your game launches, that's your big initial push, and then the big, the task then is retention. And I think if you look very recently, you look at a game like The Finals, had a really big initial burst, and now I hear very little about that game.
I'm sure people are still playing it. Very good.
Yeah, exactly. I remember you playing, but like when last did you play?
I mean... This is a while ago.
It's like, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are playing it, but now it's like to keep it consistently in the conversation is difficult. And I think very few games have done that. I think, like you said last time, Ubisoft is pretty experienced in this regard, especially when it comes to like Rainbow Six Siege and For Honor and stuff like that. And I think this having such a low barrier to entry will help it even more. But yeah, we'll see when the Call of Duties of the world come out, and when a new season of Fortnite comes out, and stuff like that. That's who you're competing with. So
the reality is also that gamers only have a finite amount of time and attention and money. Like, if I had all the time in the world, you best believe I'd be playing Counter-Strike and Dota and all these other live service games that I've kind of given up over the years because it's just I don't have the time to put into them.
You're aiming at a market that is already well established with the games that they play. Like, you are going to get, like, you and your friends are a good example where you are big Counter-Strike players, so this is initially intriguing. You're like, oh, it's a new shooter, I want to see how it feels. But will this take over the majority of your time as opposed to like going back and playing Counter-Strike? It's hard. Like, will they retain you more than the game you've been playing for over a decade? And I think the same goes for like a Call of Duty. It's a very difficult thing to like siphon players from established franchises. So yeah, we'll see.
Also, just last thing, there are local servers. In South
that's
Africa.
cool.
So,
okay.
But even like, so I was playing with my friends. I had 180 ping, and I'm sure they were obviously, I'm at a small disadvantage, but at no point.
So they made you play on South African servers?
Well, it's one of me and like four of them.
Wow. How rude.
But I mean, it still felt good. At no point did I think like, oh, that person.
I mean, I saw you pulling off some pretty ridiculous sniper shots there, so it doesn't look like it was affecting you too badly.
It feels good. When the game clicks, like, it really feels good. I think it's funny because it is like a backhanded insult / compliment, but when I say Ubisoft did a very good job of mimicking Call of Duty, I'm like, well, that's who you want to mimic. Like, Call of Duty knows what makes a good shooter, like how it feels. There's a reason they're the top dog. So if you can come close to getting a similar feel, like, sure, you copied the homework, but you've added your own flavor enough that I'm like, damn, like, yeah, it works,
Yeah, copying's not good enough. There has to be
something,
a hook. Yeah. But I think also just nailing the fundamentals is big, because you can have this big hook, but then it doesn't feel great to play.
Yeah.
And, I think Apex is a good example of like just nailing how gunplay feels, whereas the format wasn't all that new, and they've kind of stuck around.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks cool. I don't know if it's a game for me. I'm not really into that sort of very competitive shooting space. But yeah, I'm glad that it's finally out, because it was seeming like it might just die.
Yeah.
And I hope it kind of sticks around as an alternative, especially because it's free to play. So that's cool.
It's a good time. Cool. That's xDefiant.
Stellar Blade and xDefiant. We aren't going to be around for a significant amount of time after this episode, a good month, I would say.
Yeah.
Because I will be away and Matthew will be entertaining family in London. So we thought this might be a good time to look at some of the games coming out for the rest of the year and just talk about what excites us before, Summer Game Fest is happening in about a week from when you're hearing this. So by the time you listen to this, or a week past, there's going to be a lot more games, a lot more details about games we had never heard of by then to talk about. So maybe it's good to just take stock of the stuff we do know for now, and then, kind of wrap our heads. You can tell there's going to be a lot, because like the end of the year calendar is very sparse at the moment. So
I think when we record like in a month, whenever it is, like we'll have a much better look at what's coming.
Very different. Yeah. I mean, Nintendo basically has nothing for the rest of the year, and I'm pretty sure we're going to get stuff. And I think Sony as well, and Xbox to a smaller extent, but yeah. Okay, so I've got like 8 games here that are out between now and the end of the year that kind of interest both of us. There's obviously a lot more than these, but these are the big ones, I think. So kicking off with one in June, near the end of June, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. Big DLC, game. Only DLC for Elden Ring, kind of small indie game. Not sure if a lot of people have heard of it. I mean, both of us are big Elden Ring fans, and I think we are both incredibly excited to see what gets put in this DLC, because I find FromSoftware's DLCs are where they get a bit experimentative and get really out there with boss designs and difficulty. So really keen to see how they integrate this into the wider open world that they have, as opposed to like in a Bloodborne where you just get transported to a new place entirely that sits completely separate from the rest of the game. So yeah, looks real good. Anything to add there?
You're gonna play it again, or you're just gonna pick up with your old character?
Sure. I don't know. Hey, I haven't played it since I finished it, so I don't even know.
But what's interesting is that, so typically if you finish a Bloodborne or a Dark Souls, you roll credits, it's like, cool, you're done. New Game Plus or whatever. Whereas Elden Ring, if I recall, you can just carry on exploring. So if you wanted to, you could just pick up your character and then go trigger the DLC.
Yeah, I guess so.
Did you ever go to the Blood Palace in your first playthrough? It was like a optional
like underground
area. No, it's like a whole separate. Did you fight what's his name, Moog, like the blood dude?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I think that's
underground.
Yeah, I think that's where you trigger the DLC.
Yeah, you have to. I think for this DLC, you have to have beaten Radahn and Moog.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's triggered there, because that's Mikola in the little egg thing with his hand sticking out. So yeah, I'm curious, like if you go there and it just teleports you somewhere else, or if you'll see a cutscene and then suddenly the world has changed and you've got to go out and explore it a bit more to find this new area. It would be kind of cool, yeah. But you're right, like if you're starting a new character and you have to beat Mog, like that's a lot of playtime. Like he's, I would say, a pretty late game boss, if you even get to him. So, yeah. After that, I think in July, if I'm not mistaken, Frostpunk 2. I'm incredibly excited for this. There were previews that came out just this week for it. And I was kind of unaware at how the sort of format for this game had kind of changed as opposed to the first game. So did you ever play the first Frostpunk?
I never played it. I watched Lenska play a little bit of it.
So the first Frostpunk is kind of like, it's like a survival strategy game, where you're in like Ice Age world and you kind of like making very difficult decisions to build up this community and survive at the same time. But the first one was very localized. You had like a big generator in the middle of your city, and you could build off of like a radial template, like spreading outwards from that generator. But it was always just like, this is the small community that you are managing. These are the decisions you have to make that are going to affect 100, maybe 1,000 people as you grow this. So Frostpunk 2 is very different in that it zooms out in terms of scope. So you still have that central city that you're looking after, but it is much, much larger. You are not confined to this radial template. You are now building across like hexagonal tiles, and you have to like slowly explore the land outside of your city to unlock more areas for you to build on. And then you start creating these like supply runs between resources away from the town, and expanding your kind of like settlements in that way. So it's like a lot bigger, and I think in a lot of the previews I read, there was this worry that it would take away from the sort of intimate decision making that you have to do. But it seems like there's like much deeper systems in terms of like having to manage political factions that maybe want to overthrow you, or managing the moods of people, as you make hard decisions. Like, do you enforce child labor because like your labor force is just not big enough and you need things done in a certain way? Or do you allow people to work like longer hours, which puts them at risk of more sickness or injury? Like, how do those decisions play out? So that stuff still seems to be in there, just with wider ramifications, which I think is a good step for a sequel of this kind. I'm very excited. I think I'm not a huge strategy game person, but because of the very role-playing and consequence-filled nature of this game, it really vibes with me in that sense. So yeah, it's cool. I'm very excited for that.
Nice.
I think you're excited for Black Myth Wukong, which is actually coming out finally.
Yeah, I think this game is I'm interested to finally see it, because to actually play it, because we saw it, I don't know, like many years ago, it feels like now. And when we first saw it, we thought, shit, this game looks gorgeous. It's like visual. Yeah,
it's one of those things where you look at it, you're like, wow, this is the next gen of gaming. And now that it's got you, you're like, yeah, this looks like pretty much most games that are coming out now. Yeah.
So I'm just interested to see how this game actually plays, because it looks very much like the Dark Souls-esque of, you just difficult, challenging combat, gorgeous to look at, big bosses. Yeah,
looks very Sekiro-like to me.
Looks
cool.
Sekiro,
and the whole journey to the west narrative is really fun. I enjoy that. So
see what that
looks good. I'm hoping that it lives up to the expectations.
When is that out? Does it have a hard date? Is it August? Okay.
Yeah. Also in August is Star Wars Outlaws. I can't believe this game is that close. Pretty sure we're going to get a new big look at it during
soon,
Ubisoft Forward, I think, during SGF. The first gameplay thing we saw of it makes it look like a Ubisoft game with, Star Wars. But it looks cool. Like, it looks really, really visually interesting. And I like that you're playing as like a smuggler and not, one of the space wizards. So I think it could be cool. I think it could be really fun.
In the story, have they said? I don't
like time period wise.
Yeah.
I think it's set just after Empire, because like the stormtroopers are still around.
Okay, so
if I'm not mistaken.
There's definitely going to. Oh wait, if it's set after Empire, no Han Solo cameo. There will definitely be cameos, I'm sure.
Timeline. I mean, there's already a moment where you see Jabba, so that means it has to be before Return of the Jedi, because Jabba the Hutt dies there. Yeah, so it's set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
I'll put money on it. You do a mission which you give the information to Luke and Leia to tell them where Jabba is at the moment, or some bullshit like that.
100%. I was thinking the same thing because Han is in the carbonite, whatever.
Star Wars just like it's funny because I get like I don't mind it, but I also get a bit annoyed. I'm like, can we just stop telling stories in this period? Like a quick sidebar: the Acolytes, the Star Wars show is coming out. I think it's tomorrow.
Yeah,
I'm like, yes, it's a completely different time period. Can you show me Star Wars?
Yeah, it's like 100 or 1,000 years prior
like,
to what's happened.
Star Wars like in anywhere else other than the Skywalker period now, please, thank you.
I mean, it's really annoying. Like, okay, this is a tangent, but like the new Star Wars film is just expanding on Rey's story, and I'm like, but why?
Just like this
why?
whole
Let's
this
just
whole
do something different.
and
like,
universe and all these other stories, and you're gonna keep fixing on. I don't know. It's just
make a Knights of the Old Republic movie. Just do that. I mean, like that'd be so cool.
I will play Star Wars Outlaws, but at the moment I'm also like, come on, man, can we just, get away from this period?
I think the thing that really makes me keen about it is because like we've been teased for like over a decade now with the possibility of this style of game, and it always just like slips through our fingers. Like we had Star Wars 13, which looked like this style of game that just got eradicated when Disney bought LucasArts, and for all intents and purposes that was looking like a Boba Fett game at some point. There's this talk of like a Mandalorian game that was in development and got like scrapped. So yeah, maybe we're actually finally getting a Star Wars game that isn't a Jedi game that could actually come out and hopefully be good. So hoping for that. Big one in September, which was just announced this week during pretty lukewarm state of play from Sony. But the biggest game there, Astrobot. It's just called Astrobot.
Looks really good.
It looks phenomenal. If you're unfamiliar with Astrobot and you never played, it was free, right, on the PS5?
Yeah, it was like bundled with the PS5, basically.
It's like a pack-in with the PS5, yeah. That game is like, 3-4 hours long?
Yeah,
and
super.
It's 100%. Is it not?
I think 200% is like 4 or 5 hours, maybe.
Okay, maybe thinking of that, yeah.
It's like 2 to 3 hours.
I think... I mean, it's definitely tech demo-y, that game. Like it's very much like, look what this controller can do, and to this day probably uses the DualSense in the most inventive ways without feeling gimmicky. But for years people have been asking for a proper Astrobot game, just because like the platforming in that that tech demo for all intents and purposes was just really fun, and they really celebrated the PlayStation as a platform in that game. And I think based off the trailer of this one, that's the kind of vibe they're going for. It just looks much bigger. Yeah. It looks like you were saying earlier, PlayStation's Mario, essentially.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah.
100%.
What's it, September 6th, I think?
Yeah, it's not too far.
Yeah, it's not too far away. I'm keen. I saw a little Astrobot Journey figure. I'm in.
That's how they sold it to everyone. They're like, there's a little Nathan Drake, a little Kratos, a little Journey. I'm like, everyone's like,
remember in the first one, there was a little Bloodborne hunter in there. Yes, what a great time. Best. It's good to know that Sony thinks about Bloodborne from time to time. It's not like the game's turning 10 next year and still doesn't have like a next gen ported. That's all I'm gonna say. I think next year, if they don't do something for the 10th anniversary, we might as well just like give up on the hope of
Bloodborne 2.
Of them ever doing anything with that series again.
Elden Ring DLC's done. Bloodborne 2 next year.
It's up to Sony. It's really up to Sony. Like, and they just seem so disinterested in pursuing that, which just blows my mind. That
would be a system seller, not a word of a lie.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Imagine like a Bloodborne 2 comes out with a PS5 Pro or something like that. Oh my God. Like,
say less.
Say less. Another big one for September, if it comes out, because this game's been pushed back a few times for understandable reasons. Stalker 2, I think it's called Heart of... or they actually changed the name. It's called Heart of Chernobyl. Yeah, Chernobyl. Obviously this game's been pushed back a bunch because, hey, the devs were in Ukraine and we're still in Ukraine, and were in actual war, and there were developers that took up positions in the army to defend their country, and some have died, and it's it's a pretty intense thing. But the game was still being worked on, and is it was scheduled to release in 2022. It hopefully is going to come now. It's scheduled to come out 5th of September. So yeah, I'm kind of in it just to support this team, because I think what they've had to go through is quite hectic. I'm keen for a modern Stalker, because like the Stalker series is quite old now and quite difficult to go back to. So a modern take on this, I think what people don't realize is it is an RPG. Like, it's not a Metro. Metro is a shooter with this sort of vibe. Stalker is an RPG with this like nuclear apocalypse vibe. So I'm very keen to give that a go and see how it is on on a modern platform. So yeah.
What is
keen to try that
Metaphor Refantasio that you got here?
Yeah. Okay, so Metaphor Refantasio is the newest game from
the Persona people.
So it's not I got it wrong. It's not the Persona team within Atlas, but the lead game designer on Persona 5 and 4, if I'm not mistaken. After Persona 5 was like, I want to do something different within the same like company and whatever. So they took a bunch of developers from the Persona team, started up a new team within Atlas, and kind of just started working on this. And it's funny that he wanted to do something different, but ended up making a sort of Persona game in the process. But it looks like a Persona. It is. So this is from the Persona series director and the character designer from Persona. They went and did their own thing after 2016, which was after Persona 5. And yeah, it's like a medieval sort of take on the Persona formula with some differences. But if you look at the trailers, there's still this like social link sort of system. There's still turn-based combat. And it looks very out there in terms of design language. So I'm very keen to give that a go. I'm curious to see if it will bring in a new crowd who's never really vibed with Persona, but this team has constantly tried to do some things differently while staying true to what they know best. So like Catherine is a very good example, which was like a puzzle game, but still had a very sharp narrative with very difficult social questions in it.
I had no idea that Catherine was related.
Catherine was made by the Persona team because they wanted to take a small break from
I did
Persona.
Not know that.
Yeah. Catherine's phenomenal as well. It's like a fantastic puzzle game with a great story. So, that's coming out in September, October. Yeah, October 11th. So I'm keen to give that a go.
Nice.
Last one on the list here, Assassin's Creed Shadows, which was revealed a couple of weeks ago now. Yeah, I think we're going to get a gameplay reveal at the Ubisoft Forward as well, because we just got a cinematic trailer the very first time, which introduced us to the two protagonists. It's Yosuke and...
I can't remember the
second one. It's maybe because everyone was just ranting about Yosuke for so long that it was completely overshadowed the actual Japanese character in this game.
Assassin's Creed Shadows.
Imagine people angry that there isn't a Japanese lead when there actually is a Japanese lead who they can't even name. Yeah, so that's coming out in November, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if I can actually find this name. Jeez, it's Yosuke and Nao, Naoe. Nao? Noe? No, I don't know how to pronounce it.
I just thought of the singer. Whoa. It's a cameo I did not expect.
She's a female shinobi. So I get... Did you ever play Assassin's Creed... What was it called? Syndicate?
No. No, but no, it's the two, the Evie and Jacob?
Jacob Fry? Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're... The Fry twins, because they were twins.
Yeah.
And their whole thing was like Jacob was the brawler and more boisterous and like loud, and then Evie was the more stealthy sort of gameplay. And I wonder if they're going to
something similar, maybe
kind of go with that approach with this one, because it definitely looks like a split between the samurai and the shinobi. You know what I mean? But this is also their very RPG focused series. It's not like a Mirage. This is like the Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla sort of spin on Assassin's Creed. So yeah, I'm keen to see it.
I'm interested
keen
to
see how it looks as well. Yeah,
I think we've both said, and like, this isn't no offense to Ubisoft, but the fact that Ghost of Tsushima exists already, and we all made the comparison, like, this is the best Assassin's Creed game without Assassin's Creed in the title. It's interesting now to see, okay, well, now they are doing their own Japanese game. Let's see what they can do. Also, it's a tough act to follow, Ghost of Tsushima, which does it so right.
100%, yeah. And
it's
also something they need to improve upon, because like Ghost of Tsushima is almost 7 years old now. So
excuse me?
Oh no, sorry, it's 5 years old. It's 2019.
No, but,
sorry,
but
20. I thought it was
5,
2017.
But even then, 5. I'm like, what? I couldn't have played that 5 years ago.
It's 5 years old. So if they're like, oh, our
crazy,
open world is the same as that, it's like, no, it needs to be better. Trends have moved beyond that, you know.
Can't wait to climb towers and.
You see, that's the thing. Like Valhalla was honestly the epitome of quantity over quality for me, and I felt that trend started with Odyssey already, but Valhalla was the most egregious with that. I just could not cope with the amount that they were throwing.
That was the first Assassin's Creed I played, and I reached a point where I started mainlining it, and it still took me 60 hours to finish.
No, it's crazy.
It was way
much.
too big, just too much, and like. I get there are gamers there who want, like, don't get me wrong, the bang for their buck and like 3 million hours of gameplay. But then when you're losing the core thread, or you're making the narrative, you're like thinning the narrative out, like, it doesn't work. Just make a tight game that's 20 hours, 25 hours, and then supplement it with content. But don't like make it big for the sake of being big. That's just, it's too much.
No, I agree. And I think that's why I like, you know, in the modern Assassin's Creed lineage of this more RPG focused gameplay, I love Origins the most, because it is also the most restrained.
Yeah.
It is a big game, like it is larger than any Assassin's Creed before it, but it is also minuscule in comparison to Odyssey and Valhalla that came after.
Yeah.
And I think that helps it keep focused and interesting. And I'm reading here now that Ubisoft has said that the game's open world, the actual size of it, is comparable to that of Origins. So I feel like they've heard, and they're reining in at least the size of the place that you get to explore. The density, let's see, like maybe that makes it a far more interesting world to explore as well. So yeah, keen to see. There's also like big upgrades to the engine that they're using. It's the same engine, but obviously now this is only on new consoles, so they can push it a lot more. And I think a big thing that they were talking about after the reveal trailer was that it's going to have a natural day-night cycle, and all the lighting is going to be dynamic.
Oh,
and
nice.
I really want to see that. Like that looks like it will be very cool.
Yeah.
Keen to see it. I'm more excited about this than I have been about Assassin's Creed in a long time. So hoping it's good.
Cool.
And that's pretty much it for the rest of the year. There's a bunch of stuff that will obviously be announced. I think Sony's slate is quite empty, but there's a lot of whispers about a showcase, an actual showcase, only happening in September, which is where everyone suspects the new PlayStation will be announced and new games, for that will be announced.
Yeah.
Sony's having a very quiet year, I think. They already confirmed there's no sequels to any existing franchises this year anyway, so... and then Nintendo's got a lot to talk about.
That's just marketing talk. Sony's going to come out with all the prequels. Well, we did say there were no sequels.
Fair. Maybe.
Before
or
he
just
was
new
the Ghost of
IPs in general.
Tsushima, he was just the ghost of. I mean...
Get out of here. Nintendo's got a lot to pad out for the rest of the year. I mean, they already said they're not talking about the Switch 2 at their Direct for Summer Games Fest. So what do they have for the rest of the year? Do we get a Metroid 4 as the last swan song for the Switch?
I would think a Mario.
Get glimpses of new games?
But I think a Mario is maybe being saved to launch the next Switch.
100%. That's my thinking as well. Do they finally... Because Nintendo does this. They have games that are finished and they sit on them waiting for opportunistic places to put them out because they see that it's actually a very smart strategy because you don't run the risk of having a off year, you know.
Yeah.
So there's been constant talk about remasters for Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, and Wind Waker that are just waiting, that have been waiting for the longest time. So maybe we see those eventually. I don't know. And then Microsoft also got their events. They've got Avowed coming this year. There's talk of a new Doom and a new Gears, and they've got a lot to like kind of. I don't know how they get people excited anymore. It's going to be tough.
The whole Activision Blizzard library on Game Pass. Hey.
Yeah, I guess now that's the big thing. I mean, they've already said that they're having a Call of Duty showcase after their showcase. And
also,
now we know it's coming to Game Pass.
Yeah, also it's coming to Game Pass, which is a big deal, I think. And
huge deal, yeah.
Can you imagine the power move? And again, this isn't inside information. I don't get to see this sort of information through my work. But imagine all of the Call of Duties, for example, like they're on Game Pass now. I think people.
I would like that because, like, I get the itch to play some of those campaigns from time to time. And just having them available would be kind of nice. So yeah, that'd be cool. I think this is a very big roll of the dice by Microsoft because like Game Pass is still doing well. Don't get me wrong. Like there are millions and millions of people subscribed, but the growth on that service has completely stagnated now, and they've spent $70+ billion on Activision. So putting their biggest property on the subscription service, if that doesn't move the needle, that kind of, to me, says this thing is not sustainable and they need to move away from this model. Yeah. So we'll see. I'm curious to see how big of an impact it has.
Same.
They are kind of fighting with one hand behind their back, though, because unlike the PS4 era where everyone migrated to PlayStation for Call of Duty because of the exclusivity of maps and DLC, or the timed exclusivity of that, the competitive scene moved entirely to PlayStation. Xbox can't do that because they basically said in their, defense of their acquisition of Activision that they wouldn't do that. So the trump card they have is like, you will not pay for it on Xbox traditionally, where on PlayStation you can, but they can't hold content back. They can't make Xbox the de facto competitive scene place. That'll be decided by the consumers. So interesting to see play out.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much games for the rest of the year.
Nice.
You put out the questions.
I did.
Questions.
We haven't had questions for a while now. We actually did get a question.
If you want to send us a question, you can. checkpointchatpodcast@gmail.com. Or checkpointchat on all our social platforms. I mean, we're going to be away for some time, but you're more than welcome to send questions about our thoughts on SGF or whatever when we finally get back.
Just send us questions. Don't wait for the
just send us questions.
So we have a question from Geek Physique, good old Gary, who asks, so do you have any tips for somebody whose first Diablo is Diablo 4?
Oh, interesting. I think starting on the most recent one was probably the correct call, because like the older ones are all like, you can go back and play Diablo 3 now, and they're still fun, but it's nice to be part of the game that is still being worked on, being evolved over time, being balanced, being changed, I haven't really played it since launch, and I know that very recently, if not like 1 or 2 weeks ago, they put out a big patch that kind of fundamentally changed that game in a big way. It made leveling incredibly fast, much faster, so you can get to end-game content a lot quicker, which a lot of people have been wanting. When you're starting new seasons and starting new characters, that's like a big thing. It also changed, I think, drop rates of certain rare weapons and gear attributed to your character. It changed, like, I think, upgrades to weapons. Like, the overall sentiment seems to be a lot more positive on Diablo 4 since that patch came out. So I think if you're starting now, it's probably the best time to start. As for tips, I think I've always played Diablo alone. I think that's totally a viable way to play. I do think it is a game that is made better with other people, though. Yeah, like exploring, just having fun with other people is cool because they're all bringing a different class into combat. It's not just the same, thing. So you can have a more dynamic gameplay experience there. But I think it's a totally viable thing alone. And I think the story in Diablo 4 is probably the best in the series because I think they actually take it seriously.
Yeah.
It's not just an afterthought for like the dungeon crawling. So I would stick out and see the campaign through just because from a story perspective, it is a lot of fun. And then dabble with a lot of the nightmare dungeons. They're like your end game farming dungeons. And I think they're done really well in Diablo 4. They just, again, can play them alone. They are challenging, but they kind of make you think about your build in a way that the campaign doesn't. So
yeah. I was just going to say, if you find correct me if I'm wrong, I know in Diablo 3 you could flip the difficulty up and down. It's like harder difficulty means you get more rewards. But, you
can do that in 4
You can do it in
well,
4.
I think.
But I was going to say, like, don't be scared to look up a guide. Like, if you've picked a certain class and you're not sure really how to build them, I mean, there are millions of guides on, like, maybe put spec this way or equip this sort of item, whatever. And, you could probably have an easier time getting through if you are struggling.
100%.
Yeah.
Especially because like the meta keeps changing.
Yeah.
So, they keep buffing and nerfing certain things. So builds that were effective when I was playing probably aren't that effective now. And yeah, I agree with you. I think part of the allure of Diablo is that power fantasy of just like melting through waves of enemies, and it can feel somewhat disheartening if you're trying to spec in that direction, but you're not fully understanding the current meta and it's not allowing you to do that. So you've got to balance like looking at builds and building in a way that's fun to you. But most of the time, you can find multiple build guides online that go in different directions and then just settle on something that is fun for you to play.
Yeah.
Pick a class that is fun to play as opposed to the quote-unquote best class of Diablo 4. I'd never really put stake in those. I think every class is viable to a degree. And it just depends on what you want to play as. So, yeah.
I really need to get
a good game.
to Diablo 4. That's something I started.
It's real good.
Funny enough, I started playing it, I think, just before we moved, like a year ago.
Okay. That does make sense. I think it was like March
June,
last year? Something June,
it was May, June, I think. Was it May?
Oh, I played it pre-release in like March, Feb, and then it came out in May. Yeah.
So I think I started it and then we moved. And then by the time I was
would
set
definitely
up
put a
again,
dampener on that.
Yeah, and then by the time I was set up again, I was like, well, there's Final Fantasy 16. And I was like, I'll get to Diablo eventually, and I just have not. So I do have it. I need to just get to it.
It's a good time to jump in. Like I was very positive on it at launch. I know a lot of the community had issues with a lot of the end game. And it's nice to see that they've seemingly ironed a lot of that out. It took almost a year, but like Diablo 3 went through the same process. I feel like Diablo 3, at least I enjoyed at the beginning, but a lot of people took issue with a lot of the endgame stuff. And then when the DLC came out, Reaper of Souls, that was when that game hit.
That fixed that
like
game.
A new benchmark. Yeah, that game was fantastic then.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, Diablo 4 has a DLC announced. So
I think it does.
Let me see. Diablo 4 DLC. Yeah, I think they announced it. Yeah, Vessel of Hatred. So it's due to be released late 2024. So I think picking up the game now and getting accustomed to it and playing through it will set you up nicely for that DLC. And Blizzard have said that they will be launching annual DLCs for Diablo 4. So it's a live service game now for all intents and purposes. But I think if you get stuck into it, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Nice. That's
cool.
It.
Don't know if there was so much advice as more a roaring endorsement to play Diablo 4, but it's good. I think it's worth your time.
Checkpoint chat Diablo 4 at checkouts for.
Yeah, we don't have any codes. Sorry. Yeah, thanks for the question, Gary. Nice to hear again from you. There's no more, correct?
No.
Okay. No. Cool. That's been episode 252 of Checkpoint Chat. As mentioned earlier, this has been second episode in 2 weeks, so that's cool. Yay. Regularity. And now we're going to disappear for a few weeks. Yeah, I would not expect us back in June.
No, I think like maybe end of June, but otherwise 1st of July.
I mean, I only arrived back in the country on the 29th of June.
Okay,
so
we'll see on the 30th.
yeah.
No, yeah, so yeah, it'll probably be July then.
Yeah, it'll probably be a long month, but there's a lot happening this month. I'm very keen to get back and talk about that stuff when it's like 2 weeks old. It's going to be great. Yeah. So have a great June. Enjoy all the Summer Game Fest stuff. It is always an exciting time, even though it's not E3 anymore. But I think it's getting back to that sort of fever pitch of there's a lot to look forward to in games. And yeah, I think by the time we get back, the landscape will be quite different, a lot more to talk about, a lot of new things to talk about. And I'm quite excited for that. Hopefully some surprises that we don't anticipate. So yeah, have a great month of June. And thank you again for listening, and we will be back eventually. Until then, stay great, stay safe, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.